The battlefield was quiet, but it was not the silence of peace. Smoke rose from broken machines. Burned soil still gave off heat. Pieces of armor and broken weapons lay scattered across the ground. The war between the alien soldiers and the Predator had left the land scarred, and the air smelled of blood and fire. The aliens stood in formation, their tall frames covered in dark armor. Their glowing eyes watched the creature that lay before them. It was the Predator, the monster that had once hunted them across planets. A beast with claws sharp enough to tear through steel and teeth that could crush bone in seconds. Now it lay wounded, breathing heavy, its body trembling but not yet broken. One alien commander raised his weapon, ready to give the final blow. But another voice stopped him. "Leave it," the second alien said coldly. "We have won. Killing it is too easy. Let it live. Let it suffer." The others hesitated, then lowered their weapons. They called it mercy, but it was not true mercy. It was pride. It was arrogance. To them, sparing the Predator was a way to prove their power, a way to show that even the most feared creature in the galaxy now lay helpless at their feet. The Predator, bleeding and chained, lifted its head. Its eyes glowed with hate. There was no fear in its gaze, only patience, only hunger waiting for the right moment. From the shadows, a human soldier watched everything. He had been fighting on the same battlefield, but unlike the aliens, he stayed quiet, blending into the ruins. His face was tired, scarred, and dirty with ash, but his eyes were sharp. He saw what the aliens did not. He whispered to himself, "You think it's mercy, but this is a mistake." The human had seen mercy before. He had seen it break armies, seen it turn strong men into weak leaders. Mercy could be a gift, but it could also be a weapon. And on this night, it looked more like a trap. The Predator turned its head slightly, and for the briefest second, its eyes locked with the humans. Something passed between them, something the aliens could not understand. The human felt his heart beat faster, as if the Predator had chosen him, even from afar. The aliens began to march away, leaving guards to watch the wounded creature. Their laughter echoed in the distance, confident that the Predator was no longer a threat. But the human knew better. He had fought Predators before. He had learned one truth: Predators did not kneel, not unless they chose to. Night fell, and the battlefield grew cold. The firelight flickered across broken walls and silent corpses. The guards whispered to each other, but they did not notice how the Predator's eyes never closed. It stared into the dark, waiting, listening. From his hiding place, the human soldier studied it. Every breath, every twitch of its claws, every ripple of muscle under its torn skin. He could feel the danger like heat on his face, yet he also felt something else, something strange. The Predator was not looking at the aliens. It was looking at him. The human clenched his fists. He should leave. He should escape while he still could. But something rooted him to the ground. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was madness. Or maybe it was instinct. The same instinct that told him this night would not end the way the aliens expected. The silence broke with a low growl. The Predator's chest rose, and a deep, rumbling sound shook the air. The guards laughed nervously, telling each other it was weak, it was dying. But the human knew that sound. It was not weakness. It was warning. The Predator's eyes glowed brighter now, fixed on the human. The chain rattled as it shifted, but it did not attack. Instead, it lowered its head just slightly, as if to acknowledge him. The human's breath caught in his throat. For the first time, he felt not like a hunter, not like a soldier, but like something else entirely. Chosen. He whispered into the night, What are you waiting for?" The Predator did not answer, but in its silence, the human felt the truth. Mercy had not saved it. Mercy had only changed its path, and that path now led to him. The encounter was no accident. It was the beginning of something none of them could control. The night grew colder as the alien guards sat around a small fire, their voices low and careless. They spoke of victory, of how their mercy showed strength. Yet not one of them noticed how the Predator's breathing steadied, how its golden eyes gleamed brighter under the pale moonlight. Its wounds still bled, but its spirit was unbroken. It did not look beaten, it looked patient. The human remained hidden among broken walls and twisted metal. His rifle was silent in his hands, though his finger twitched with the urge to aim. Every instinct told him to keep his distance, to leave this cursed ground and never look back. But his eyes stayed locked on the creature. He had seen predators before, but none had ever looked at him this way. It was as if it understood him, as if there was something unspoken tying them together. One of the guards tossed a bone toward the predator, laughing. "Here, beast, eat your scraps." The predator did not move. It did not lower itself to beg or crawl. Instead, it stared at the human again, ignoring the taunt, ignoring the aliens. The chain rattled softly as its claws flexed against the ground. The human's chest tightened. He could almost feel the hunger rolling off it like heat from a fire. This was not just the hunger for food. This was deeper, older, the hunger of something that had never been tamed, never been mastered. And yet it did not lash out. It waited. For him, hours passed, and the guards grew tired. One by one they leaned against the ruins, their eyes heavy, their voices fading. The forest beyond the battlefield whispered with strange sounds, but the human did not move. He crouched low, his breath shallow, watching. Finally, unable to resist, he stepped closer. Quietly, carefully, each movement deliberate. The predator's head lifted, and the chain clinked as it shifted. The guards stirred but did not wake. The human reached into his pack and pulled out a strip of raw meat, stolen from the supplies earlier. His hand trembled as he held it out, just beyond the firelight. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the predator dragged itself forward. The sound of metal scraping against stone echoed softly as the chain pulled tight. The beast stopped inches away, its eyes glowing like molten gold. The human could see every scar, every wound across its body. Its breath was hot and heavy, steaming in the night air. The claws hovered close enough to shred him apart, yet it did not strike. Instead, it opened its jaws and took the meat gently from his hand. The human's pulse thundered in his ears. His fingers brushed against the creature's rough skin, and he did not pull away. For a heartbeat, they stood locked in silence, predator and man, enemies by nature. Now bound by something unexplainable, the predator ate slowly, never taking its eyes off him. When it finished, it did not growl, did not threaten. It lowered its head slightly, in a gesture that looked too close to respect. The human stepped back, his mind racing. This was impossible. The aliens believed they had broken the predator with mercy, but he could see the truth. The beast had not surrendered to them. It had chosen something else. Behind him, one of the guards stirred in his sleep, muttering. The human froze, waiting until the noise faded again. His eyes returned to the predator, and he found it still watching him. No chains, no pain, no mercy could explain this. In that moment, he realized he was no longer a stranger in this story. He was at the center of it. Whatever the predator saw in him, it was not weakness. It was recognition. And deep inside, the human understood something chilling. This creature, feared across the stars, would never again belong to the aliens. It had chosen him. The first rays of dawn crept across the battlefield, painting the ruins in pale gold. The alien guards stirred awake, unaware of what had passed in the night. They laughed among themselves, speaking of their mercy as if it were a trophy. Yet the predator sat in silence, its chains clinking softly, its eyes fixed only on the human. The man had not slept. He leaned against the broken wall, his weapon resting across his knees. He should have left hours ago, yet something anchored him here. Every time he thought of walking away, the predator's eyes found him again. Not pleading, not demanding, only waiting. One of the guards stepped forward and kicked dirt toward the beast. Still alive. Pathetic. The predator did not react. It gave no growl, no snarl. Its eyes slid past the alien and locked on the human once more. That look was a choice, and the human knew it later when the guards moved off to fetch supplies. The man approached the predator again. His boots crunched softly on the ash as he reached into his pack. Another strip of raw meat hung in his hand. The predator's nostrils flared, its body tense. The chain pulled tight as it shifted closer, but still it waited. He crouched low, extending his hand. The air between them felt charged, alive. The predator leaned forward, jaws opening, but this time it did not snatch. It took the meat with a slow, deliberate motion, its teeth grazing his skin without harm. The human let out a shaky breath. "You understand me, don't you?" He whispered. The predator chewed quietly, its golden eyes never blinking. Then, with a surprising motion, it lowered its head, pressing its massive skull close to the ground. Submission not to the aliens, not to chains, but to him. A chill ran down his spine. He knew what this meant. The predator was no longer resisting. It was offering loyalty. It had chosen him as master. When the guards returned, they saw only a beast in chains and a human watching from afar. They did not see the silent bond that had formed, but the man felt it. With every heartbeat, the truth grew heavier. He had crossed a line that could not be undone. As night approached once again, the predator shifted closer when the aliens were not looking. Its eyes glowed in the dim light, fierce yet calm. The human could sense it if he gave the word, if he cut the chain. The predator would follow him into battle, not as a monster, but as his own. He gripped his rifle tighter. This was no mercy. This was power, ancient and dangerous. And now it belonged to him. The campfire burned low as the second night settled over the battlefield. Shadows stretched long against the ruined walls, and the air carried a sharp bite of cold. The aliens sat close together, their armor dimly glowing as they argued about their next move. Some wanted to transport the predator off-world. Others wanted to display it as a symbol of their victory. Their voices carried pride, but beneath that pride was unease. They all sensed it, though none dared to admit it. Something was wrong with the beast. The predator had stopped fighting its chains. It no longer snarled when approached, no longer lunged when provoked. Instead, it sat still, eyes half closed, its massive chest rising and falling with slow breaths. To the aliens, it looked like surrender. But surrender was not in the nature of this creature. They should have been celebrating their triumph, yet an invisible weight hung over them. A fear they could not shake. The human soldier watched in silence, crouched just beyond the reach of the firelight. He had not moved far since the night before. The bond he felt with the predator had not faded. It had only grown stronger. Every time their eyes met, he saw loyalty where there should have been rage. The beast was not tamed by chains. It was tamed by choice. And that choice was him. One alien guard kicked at the dirt, glaring at the predator. Look at it. Weak. We've broken it. He spat in the dust, but his hand lingered too long on his weapon. His words were bold, yet his eyes betrayed doubt. Another shook his head. No, it's waiting for something. Beasts like this don't break. They bend until they strike. The commander silenced them both. But even he could not mask the tension in his stance. The longer they looked at the predator, the more they questioned their own story of victory. Mercy, they called it, but now it felt like a mistake they could not take back. When the guards moved away to rest, the human stepped closer again. He carried nothing this time, no food, no offering, only his presence. The predator's head lifted, golden eyes catching the faint glow of the fire. Its tail brushed the ground once, slow and deliberate. Before it lowered its head in quiet acknowledgement, the man's pulse quickened. He could almost hear the unspoken message, I am yours, not theirs. He knelt beside it, his hand brushing against the cold iron of the chains. For a brief moment, the thought struck him, cut the bonds, free it, let it stand by his side. The image of it tearing through the aliens in an instant burned in his mind. But he did not move, not yet. The time was not right. As he rose, the predator's gaze followed him, unblinking, loyal. Later that night, one of the aliens approached the human, suspicious. Why do you stay here, human? This isn't your war anymore. His voice was sharp, probing. The man shrugged. Maybe I'm waiting. Maybe I just like watching mistakes unfold. The alien sneered, but turned away. Still, doubt flickered across his face. Even they could feel it now. The beast was not theirs to control. By dawn, the whispers began. Some swore the predator moved only when the human did. Others claimed its growls fell silent whenever he was near. Fear spread quietly through the ranks. Fear that their mercy had not tamed the beast, but given it a new master. And though no one dared to say it aloud, every soldier in the camp began to glance nervously at the man in the shadows. Because if the predator had chosen him, then mercy had not saved them. Mercy had doomed them. The sun rose behind a sky of pale orange, its light cutting across the ruins and broken machines. The aliens prepared for another day of travel, tightening their armor and checking their weapons. They spoke loudly to cover their unease. But the weight of the predator's silence pressed on all of them. It crouched near the edge of the camp, chains digging into the dirt, golden eyes steady as always. The human soldier stayed close to the shadows, watching. He had barely eaten, barely rested, yet his body hummed with restless energy. He knew the bond had grown too strong to ignore, and he also knew the aliens sensed it. Their glances came sharper now, their voices carrying suspicion. To them, he was no longer just another survivor of war, he was a threat tied to the beast. When the commander barked an order, two guards marched toward the human. "Stand up," one demanded, pointing his weapon. "You've been lingering too long. Explain yourself." The man did not flinch. He stood slowly, his gaze sliding toward the predator. The creature's head rose at once, muscles rippling under scarred skin, a low growl vibrating deep in its chest. The chain strained as it shifted forward. "Keep it back," the guard snapped nervously, pressing the barrel closer to the human's chest. "Tell it you're not its master." The human smirked faintly. "I don't think you understand how this works." The guard shoved him. The instant skin met armor. The air split with a roar. The predator lunged. Chains shattered against the stone, sparks flying as the beast crashed forward with a fury that made the ground shake. The first guard screamed before claws tore through him, his body thrown aside like paper. The second managed a shot, but the bullet barely slowed the monster. With jaws wide and eyes blazing, the predator ripped him down in a storm of teeth and blood. The camp erupted in chaos. Aliens scrambled, weapons firing wildly as the beast tore through their ranks. The human dropped to the ground, dust and blood filling the air as he rolled clear of the violence. He watched with cold clarity as the predator moved, not mindless, not random, but deliberate. It did not attack blindly. It struck only those who threatened him. The commander shouted orders, trying to rally his troops. Blaster fire lit the camp, but every shot seemed to glance off or arrive too late. The predator's rage was unstoppable, a storm long held back, now finally unleashed. When it was over, silence returned, heavy and thick. Bodies lay broken, weapons scattered across the dirt. Smoke drifted from shattered rifles, and the stench of blood filled the air. The predator stood tall in the center of it all, its chest heaving, golden eyes still fixed on the man. Slowly, it padded toward him, claws dripping red. The human did not raise his weapon, did not step back. He only met its gaze. The beast stopped at his side and lowered its head. Chains dangled loose around its neck, torn apart in its fury. In that moment, the truth was undeniable to all who still lived. The predator had chosen. It was no longer a monster of the wild. It was his. The survivors huddled together at the far edge of the ruined camp, their weapons trembling in their hands. Smoke drifted upward from shattered blasters, and the scent of blood hung thick in the air. Where once the aliens had stood tall and proud, now they crouched low, their voices sharp with fear. The creature they thought broken, the predator they claimed as proof of their power, now stood beside the human, chains torn and useless at its feet. The human did not move to control it. He did not shout commands or pull at restraints. He only stood calm, silent, his eyes locked on the beast. And still, the predator obeyed. Its golden gaze softened when it turned to him, its breathing steadying as if the storm had already passed. To the aliens, this was worse than any nightmare. One soldier whispered hoarsely, "It listens to him." Another shook his head violently. "No, beasts don't listen. They destroy." But even as he spoke, the predator shifted closer to the man, lowering its head in a gesture no one had ever seen before. It was not surrender, it was recognition. The aliens realized it too late. Their act of mercy had not broken the beast. It had only given it time to choose, and what it chose was the human. The commander stepped forward, his armor scratched and dented, his voice tight with desperation. "This is an illusion. The predator is wounded, confused. It will turn on him soon enough." The human tilted his head slightly, his tone calm. "You've fought it. You've seen its rage. Does it look confused to you?" The predator growled low, a sound that rolled through the camp like thunder. The commander froze, his hand twitching near his weapon, but never daring to draw. Fear spread in waves through the ranks. These were soldiers who had faced war across worlds, who had stood against monsters and machines alike, yet nothing had ever, shaken them like the sight, the galaxy's most feared predator, standing at the side of a scarred human as if he were master, guardian, and pack all in one. The silence stretched long. No one dared to breathe too loudly. The predator shifted again, rushing against the man with quiet trust before lifting its gaze toward the aliens. Its teeth glinted in the dim firelight, and the message was clear. The human finally spoke, his voice carrying steady across the ruins. Mercy was never yours to give. It never belonged to you. You thought you owned its fate. But beasts like this don't bow to chains. They bow to choice, the commander's. Jaw tightened, but the truth was carved into the air around them. Every soldier could see it. Mercy had not saved them, it had doomed them. The predator had not been broken. It had been watching, waiting, until it found the one worthy of its loyalty. Now, standing tall beside the human, the predator no longer looked like a prisoner. It looked like a weapon, a shadow of death, bound not by force but by bond. And the aliens understood at last. The human was no longer just a man. He was master of the predator they had once feared. Ash drifted through the air like falling snow, settling on the broken weapons and the bodies left scattered across the ruins. The fire that had once warmed the alien guards was no more than smoldering embers, casting faint glows in the cold dawn. Every surviving alien stood rigid, their armor cracked, their helmets dented, their spirits torn between disbelief and terror. Before them, the predator crouched beside the human, its chains broken, its eyes blazing gold in the half-dash light. No one moved. No one dared to. The human stood with calm strength, his rifle still slung across his back. He didn't need it now. His presence alone seemed enough to keep the beast steady, though the ground still carried the echo of its rage. He reached down slowly, his hand brushing across the predator's head. The creature leaned into the touch, not with the fury of a monster, but with the loyalty of a companion. One alien whispered what all of them were already thinking. "It's his." The words spread like a sickness, carrying dread with every breath. They had called it mercy when they spared the predator. They had laughed at their own generosity. Now, their so-called mercy had made them witnesses to something far worse, a bond between man and monst. The commander tried to speak, his voice rough and strained. "We will kill it. We still have weapons, But before he could finish, the predator lifted its head and growled. The sound rolled through the air like thunder, a warning that froze every soldier in place. The human's voice followed, steady and sharp. "You saw what it did when you pushed me. You saw how fast mercy turned to death. Do you think your weapons will matter now?" Silence fell again. The commander's hands tightened at his sides, but he did not answer. Deep down, he knew the human was right. He had seen his men torn apart in moments, their screams swallowed by the beast's fury. Nothing they had could change the truth. The human took a step forward, the predator moving in perfect rhythm at his side. Each motion was controlled, deliberate. Together, they looked less like man and beast, more like two halves of a single will. "You wanted to prove power," the human continued, his voice carrying across the ruins. "You called it mercy when you chained a predator. But mercy means nothing if the one you spare chooses another path. You thought you owned its fate. Now look at it. Look at me. Do you see mercy here?" The aliens shifted uneasily, their grips slipping on their weapons. The truth burned brighter than any fire. This was no act of confusion, no accident. The predator had chosen the human, and that choice had rewritten everything they thought they controlled. The beast rose to its full height, its shadow stretching long in the morning light. It bared its teeth, not in rage, but in silent promise. The message was simple. It would kill for him. It would die for him. It belonged to no one else. Fear broke through the commander's pride. His voice cracked as he barked the only order that made sense. "Fall back. All of you fall back." The soldiers obeyed, stumbling in their retreat, their boots pounding against the broken ground. Not one dared to look back as they left the battlefield behind. Leaving the human and the predator alone among the ruins, the man watched them go, his expression unreadable. He did not chase them, did not raise his weapon. There was no need. Their fear was victory enough. When the last of them disappeared into the distance, he sank down against the ruined wall, exhaustion finally catching him. The predator lowered itself beside him, its massive frame pressing into the dirt. For the first time since the battle began, the air felt still, almost peaceful. The human rested a hand on its head again. They thought mercy would make them strong. But mercy was their weakness. The predator's eyes glowed softly in response, its breathing slow. Steady, loyal. The man let out a tired laugh, shaking his head. And now look at you, the galaxy's nightmare, sitting here like a faithful hound. What will they call you now? Predator, pet, or something worse? The creature did not answer, but its silence was loud enough. It had chosen. It would follow him into darkness, into fire, into war, if that was where his path led dot above them. The sun climbed higher, breaking through the clouds and spilling light across the broken battlefield. Where once there had been defeat, now there was something far more dangerous, an alliance no one had expected. For the aliens, this day would be remembered as the moment their mercy turned to fear. For the human, it was the day he gained a companion unlike any other. And for the predator, it was the day it stopped being a beast and became something greater. Together, man and monster sat in silence as the world shifted around them. Whatever battles lay ahead, whatever enemies waited beyond the stars, they would not face them alone. And all who had witnessed this strange encounter would never forget the truth. Mercy is never safe. When given to a predator, especially when that predator has already chosen its master.